Norway. The wealthiest welfare state in the world developed its country and its capital Oslo mostly through isolated market-driven projects which form a type of patchwork urbanism that has little regard to its context. With the development of the fjord city, most of the focus has been shifted towards the waterfront area, while its connection to the existing city fabric has been largely neglected. The territory of Oslo can be divided into three areas. The city center, which starts from the waterfront and spreads towards the surrounding hills, the residential area, which forms a transition from city to nature, and the surrounding hills, which are used as a natural border for the development of Oslo. Historically, the central area of Oslo was divided into the inhabited Kvadraturen, the port area along the sea, and the infrastructural and production belt located along the Akerselva River. The meeting point of these three spatially radically different areas is the Oslo Central Station. During its recent history, densification through public transport has been a very popular way of developing the city. By adding new nodes of public transportation, surrounding areas can be built denser and higher than the adjacent tissue, creating islands of imported urbanity of a scale that was previously not familiar to Oslo. This approach shows a lack of urban design and articulation with the created open and public spaces, especially with their connections to the existing fabric. The chosen site, Grønland, consisting of the Oslo Central Station, the Oslo Bus Terminal, and the Grønland Metro Station, functions as a hub. However, the multiplication of layers that appears here leads to a confusing intertwinement of paths and directions, where the pedestrian is forced to circumnavigate through a vast field of infrastructural objects. The public transportation system, implemented in order to lessen the number of personal vehicles and increase the amount of pedestrian traffic in the city, works against the pedestrian. By the subordination of the pedestrian to the residual spaces left by vehicular infrastructure, this area more resembles an emergency exit from a city than a representative main entrance. The flyover and the Oslo Bus Terminal function together. The bus terminal is envisioned as a gallery passage which connects the area in front of the central station with the Grønland residential neighborhood. The building fails to perform in this way due to the lack of attractive pedestrian content. Its ground floor layout serves primarily the buses and not the passengers. This perpetuates the spatial experience of the backside of the city felt throughout the area. The flyover, being placed in a part of the city where the most different programs, users, and typologies come together, instead of helping to connect these entities, it separates and segregates. It disturbs pedestrian traffic. If we consider that decentralization of the public transportation system and the move of the bus terminal to a different location is an undergoing debate, we can consider the removal of the building from the site. Due to the fact that this extremely central site has a high economic and spatial value, it is inevitable that a dense and lucrative development is imminent. We create a plot with the possibility to blend the existing with the new in order to articulate this part of the city. With developing by subtracting instead of adding infrastructure, and by keeping in mind the pedestrian as the primary user of the city, we propose a project which takes into consideration the needs of its surroundings, adds value to a wider neighborhood area, provides orientation when entering the city through the central station, and combines all the parts and inhabitants of Oslo into a place that can be used equally by everyone. The river can now be reopened in all its length towards the sea. Once again, it becomes part of the city. This enhances a series of spatial alignments along the riverside. It unites disparate flows and events by following its path. The park becomes a gateway for the existing underground connections, using the river as its spatial orientation. This creates a unique spatial experience within Oslo. The surrounding nature is once again connected to the sea, and the river regains its infrastructural purpose within the city. The park and the river render the area more child and family friendly, and they allow the interaction of all layers of society, while simultaneously representing the Norwegian spatial ideals of nature. The central station is a threshold from the outside world into Oslo. It is the first impression. The typical Norwegian scenery of highly civilized life, living among forest, hills and fjords, proves not to exist here, but rather elsewhere. In reality, the gate to Oslo consists of various types of infrastructure forming a huge knot. By switching one's role from a public transportation user to a pedestrian, it proves extremely complicated to navigate through the space. The proposal introduces a plaza that acts as a common ground for the diverse islands within the area. It is a node that gives each type of transportation a clear path, both horizontally and vertically. It is situated in a way that pedestrians can orientate themselves. As a point of entering the city, it becomes both a physical and metaphorical transition, leading a visitor from a concrete jungle to the real spirit of Oslo. By creating an urban design project where the in-between spaces are the primary architectural interest, a sequence of spatial and visual connections are preserved and created. The change in scale and density of this part of the project responds to the conditions of the existing neighborhood. A variety of open and public spaces is introduced to the site, where the streets and squares differ in size and use. Each of them creates a specific quality that responds to the existing site and enhances the given spatial features. Vital public urban areas within this most visited place in Norway become the formative and restrictive factors for future developers. They function and contribute to the existing neighborhood regardless of the program. This results in the changing of the process of city forming by putting urban design as the leading strategy and not as an accidental residue. We approach developments within the built city fabric by focusing on the performance of the ground.